Injustice, episode 3. For 3 consecutive days, Hia had been sleeping on the cold floor without a blanket. The result was a fever. Before Yeshab woke up, Hia had to iron his suits as per his orders. This was her duty, which he had assigned to her when she was brought into his room. Yeshab usually woke up by 5 a.m. and Hia had to prepare his clothes beforehand. But today, Yeshab was already awake. And Hia was still curled up in the same position. Without saying a word, Yeshab went to take a shower. When he returned, she was still lying there. Hia, He called her name while standing beside her. But she didn't move. He bent down to check and realized she was burning with fever. Great. Another problem, he muttered under his breath and picked her up, throwing her onto the bed. The sudden movement made Hia open her eyes for a moment. But she was too weak to understand what was happening and closed them again. Yeshab grabbed his phone and called Hashmat. Bring Dr. Shakir to my room immediately. Even if he's asleep, wake him up. After ending the call, he adjusted the blanket over her before stepping out of the room. A few minutes later, Hashmat arrived with Dr. Shakir. It's a fever caused by the cold, Dr. Shakir diagnosed. I'm prescribing some medicines. Give them to her after she eats and she should feel better soon, inshallah. After the doctor left, Yeshab checked the time, 6 a.m. He went downstairs to ask one of the maids to prepare food for Hia. But no one was around. The sun is up and these so-called noble women are still resting. Barbie has spoiled them too much, he muttered angrily as he walked into the kitchen. After a moment of hesitation, he heated some milk and placed it on a tray with some dry bread slices. Before heading back upstairs. TSK. Even this had to be done by you, Yeshab Khan, and that too for an enemy. He grumbled, kicking the door open. He placed the tray on the bedside table and pulled the blanket off Hia. Wake up, Princess Hia. Your servants have returned after a day of wandering. Let me serve you, he said sarcastically. The loud voice startled Hia awake. He pushed the tray toward her. Eat. She saw the glass of milk and dry bread on the tray. I don't drink milk. But how do I tell him? Are you dead or what? And no, she stammered, quickly picking up a slice and taking a bite, washing it down with a sip of milk. After eating, take this medicine, he ordered before grabbing his things and leaving the room. Struggling, Hia forced herself to finish the dry bread and milk, then took the medicine before collapsing back into bed. 10 p.m. Yeshab returned to the room and saw Hia still wrapped in the blanket. He shook his head in irritation and went to change. After changing, he used the intercom to call Gul, asking her to bring tea. A few minutes later, Gul arrived with the tea. Did she eat lunch? He asked. No, sir. I brought it, but she was asleep, Gul replied. Bring food for her now, he ordered. After finishing his tea, he walked over to the bed and yanked the blanket off Hia. Wake up, Princess Hia. Let me serve you, he mocked. Reluctantly, Hia sat up. Before he could say anything else, he noticed her flushed, fevered face and remained silent. Food is coming. Eat and take your medicine, he commanded. This isn't your father's mansion where you can laze around for days. When I return tomorrow, I want to see you up and about. Understood? Why yes, she quickly nodded. He checked her forehead and cheeks. The fever had subsided significantly since morning. Without another word, he gathered his things and left again. Hia wanted to ask where he was going so late at night, but she stayed silent. Just then, Gul entered with the food tray. Do you need anything else, Hia Bibi? No. Shall I leave? Yes, go. After Gul left, Hia looked at the food tray. Despite being treated as an enemy, she had never been deprived of good food. Even Yeshab never restricted her meals. She ate a few bites, took her medicine, and lay down again. Tomorrow, she had to be up and about, orders were orders. The next day, Hia was cleaning the room when Yeshab walked in. Cleaning the entire room was also her responsibility. No maids were allowed in unless absolutely necessary. So she had to handle everything, including dusting. And Yesheb was extremely particular about cleanliness. If he found even a speck of dust, she had to endure his harsh words. Right now, she was dusting when he entered. She quickly put the duster down, washed her hands, and took a glass of water from the mini fridge, offering it to him. "Khan, water." He opened his eyes, sat up slightly, and took the glass. "How are you feeling now?" I am fine," she replied softly. He finished the water and placed the empty glass back in the tray. As she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. "Take off my shoes." "Me? Is there anyone else here?" He raised an eyebrow. Seeing his expression, she quickly kneeled, removed his shoes and then his socks. Yesheb felt an unexpected comfort from the softness of her hands. "Massage my feet." She silently obeyed, placing his foot in her lap and pressing gently. For a few minutes, Yesheb enjoyed the relaxation, then sat up. He studied her hands for a moment before taking one in his own. Slowly, he traced the lines of her palm as if trying to read her destiny. Then, without warning, he lowered his lips to her open palm, pressing a soft kiss before standing up and walking into the washroom. Stunned, Hia watched his retreating back. Her heart pounded as she stared at her hand, feeling the warmth of his touch still lingering. Lowering her head, she kissed the same spot where he had left his mark. "Where will you find another like me? Someone who endures your cruelty and still loves you." That evening, Gul entered with a warm blanket. "What's this for?" Hia asked. "I don't know, Bibi. Khan Sahib ordered it." "Okay, put it there." Later that night, Yesheb explained that the bedding was for her. Perhaps seeing her sick had softened his heart, so he arranged a warm bed. But her sleeping place remained unchanged, on the floor. Still, she was grateful for the small mercy. "At least I won't be freezing anymore," she thought, happily wrapping herself in the soft blanket before drifting off to sleep. The next morning, at 5 a.m., Yesheb woke up as usual. Hia had already ironed 2 of his stiffly starched suits. She had never ironed her own clothes before, let alone men's suits. But after struggling for days, she had finally learned it. As she worked, Yesheb entered the dressing room, glanced at her briefly, and went to take a shower. She quickly hung his suits and rushed to prepare his breakfast. Yesheb only had breakfast in his room. Lunch was outside and dinner was at the dining table. Before she came, Gul handled his breakfast. But now, this duty belonged to Hia. The first time she made his tea, she had messed up badly. He took one sip and spilled the entire cup on the floor. "Is this tea? You call this tea? What's wrong, Khan? Did your family drink this disgusting concoction for breakfast?" "And no. I never made tea before." "Well, now you have to. So learn fast." Now, she was extra careful while preparing his tea. She had no desire to face his wrath again. "A cruel man who wounds me yet tends to my scars himself. What kind of love is this?"